Hello, everyone. Welcome, Vitam. And today has been a rather amazing day at the World Cup because we we won the game 2-0 to Poland versus Saudi Arabia. And I was delighted because my guest today, Joseph Alford, co-artistic director of Theatre O, we were texting, and I was so delighted because Joseph was absolutely gunning for Poland, and as we were going through the match, we said things like, "Who moved the goalpost?" And at the end of it, we were both cheering. So welcome today, Joseph. Honorary poll.
Right.
So before I introduce you anymore, tell me, what is your connection with Poland?
My parents moved to Warsaw in 1985 when I was 11. They went to go and live there because my father was director of the British Council. So from 85 to 89, that's where they lived, and that's where I went for all my holidays. It wasn't at the time somewhere where there was a school for me to go to, but that's it. That's where I spent my teenage years, my teenage holidays.
Fantastic. And I mean, what? So your father was at the British Council?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Wonderful. So you really saw Poland at a very exciting time.
It was an amazing time. Yeah, I mean,
Oh.
89 was when, so we left as the roundtable talks were starting, but just, I don't know, the moment at which suddenly you could get away with wearing your Solidarność t-shirt on the tram,
Mm.
rather than being bundled off or arrested or told to take it off. Yeah, it was a really exciting time. Yeah.
Wow. And on Monday, you will be at Ognisko Polskie here in London. And I mean, you're going to be
Well, yeah. So on Monday, it's the launch of a new translation. I think the first English translation of Adam Mickiewicz's Ballads and Romances, and Charles Kraszewski has done a beautiful job of the translation. And Charles and I were collaborating last year a little bit because we were trying to put together a big dance project with 4 really exciting Polish choreographers. Which has since been put on hold for various reasons, but we thought it would be great to do something together for the launch of the book on Monday. So I've got together with one of the choreographers, in fact, who was going to be in the part of that other project, Ilona Gumowska. She's going to come over from Warsaw. She's a choreographer and a fantastic dancer, and an amazing sound artist who's based here in London called Damsel Elysium.
Yes.
And in the spirit of Mickiewicz, one of the things he was very famous for was his ability to improvise, and so he would. I guess he would do the equivalent of maybe like a rap battle, where he would just go off on one with his poetry and would amaze people. So partly through necessity, we are going to put together a kind of an improvised performance. Obviously, the text will not be improvised. That's my part. I get the easy part. I just get to read the text. But both Ilona and Damsel Elysium will be improvising with me to I guess present these amazing, beautiful poems in new and unexpected ways.
Fantastic. It's Poland's national poet, and it's just wonderful that this translation has happened, and fantastic that you're bringing this really fresh spirit to the performance of the ballads with 2 really, really exciting artists. Wow, fantastic. But tell me about the performance. We've got dance, got music, poetry reading. How's it all going to come together?
Well, that's a very good question because, as I said, it's going to be largely improvised. So we've all been in contact. We've all been talking, and I've done recordings of me reading the pieces, so that Ilona and Damsel Elysium have been able to listen to that and already try out some ideas. I'd say probably in this case, although Damsel Elysium is a fantastic musician, in this case it's more about sound and soundscape. So they're using an upright bass and piano and electronic sound effects to create atmosphere and create some kind of response to the stories and the sound of the words. And Ilona as well, finding ways of moving that captures the spirit of the pieces. I think what we're not interested in. I mean, the words tell the story. That's very clear, and they're beautiful stories, and they're really well expressed. So it's a question of finding with the movement and the sound things that support that and contribute that and add another dimension. That something that you're not going to experience when you're reading the book at home. It's something that can only be done in a live environment. So we wanted to theatricalize it in that sense, to make it a kind of more of a total experience, I suppose.
Gosh. And this will be Ognisko, which is a beautiful venue. I mean, I think it's going to be a really special night.
I hope so. Yeah. I mean, we're in the very beautiful ballroom, and the way that we've set it up is that it's going to be in traverse. So the audience are extremely close to the action. I wanted to create something informal about the feel of it, something that made it possible for the audience to feel like they were part of it as well. So I'll be at one end and Damsel Elysium at the other, and Ilona kind of in the middle. Actually, one of the things that came to mind when I first saw the space, I was just thinking about 80s Warsaw and basements in the old town.
Yes.
A group of jazz musicians, or seeing an impromptu play, or whatever it is. So that was in my mind a little bit, to create that sort of a spirit, something that's really alive and happening in the moment.
Yeah, it's funny. So I always think when I hear music and a performance at Ognisko in that ballroom, I always think of Chopin in Paris with the salons.
Right.
And
yeah.
I always just get transported back to that, and this image of him playing and a few people together, and that intimacy, which is really hard to get anywhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, let's see how it feels. I mean, the Chopin Mickiewicz connection as well. I mean, I think he, on occasion, performed poetry whilst Chopin played. I might be wrong about that, but somewhere in my head, that is something that happened. I'm not suggesting that, I'm not kind of comparing us to Chopin and Mickiewicz, but nevertheless, that salon atmosphere, that excitement of seeing something different and for the first time, and up close and personal, I think is fantastic.
Yeah, and I mean, as a Pole living in London, I'm very excited about the fact that we can share our national poetry, our national poet, with the English language. I'm really interested to see how that sounds.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's also that's quite a pressure as well, but I think it's really useful somehow that I come to it without any of the baggage. For me, it doesn't carry the same emotional weight that him being the national bard brings with it. So I come to it, and also Damsel Elysium, maybe different for Ilona, but I come to it as poetry. It doesn't. It's I'm interested in all of the context, and I've read a lot about it, but I maybe the reverence is different, which I think is a good thing.
Absolutely. I mean, he's also highly, he's a national poet for Lithuania and Belarus as well.
Yeah, lots of people claim him.
Yeah, we'll share him.
Yeah.
And that just goes to show how he does touch people.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, he really does. And I think that it's an interesting moment for me to discover him, because I think the Romantic movement which was different in Poland than it was here, for example. I mean, there were some core similarities, but it had a religious aspect with Mickiewicz that it didn't have with Byron and Keats and Shelley. But it was it was on the back of a time of a questioning of the reason-based approach, the scientific-based approach, and it was coming back to the self and what is it to feel, and how important are feelings and emotions and sense of self and sense of identity. Of course, everything that's happening in the world at the moment, and in Ukraine, and the question of national identity there, there's reflections of that in Mickiewicz, because there was a time when the Polish identity was held in the diaspora. It didn't exist, in the country. So the importance of culture and poetry as a sort of safe place, or somewhere where national identity was guarded and kept alive. I think that's really interesting. But I also think we're living in a world of incredible narcissism at the moment, where the self is clearly important, and has kind of exploded as an industry, even the idea of the self and self-identity. So it's a really interesting time to be picking up on this kind of work and these kind of questions.
I think it's also interesting in terms of identity, because at the time we were carrying our nation in ourselves. It didn't exist. So we were Poland.
Yeah.
And the self, when you talk about self, it's not just about yourself, but the nation. And that's sort of the romance of the nation. I find it, very, very exciting and interesting, and very relevant for Poles like me, who are born here in the UK,
very much.
who feel Polish and have that sense of self and Polishness, and the romance, because as children, well, we didn't have family to go and visit. Some people did, but I didn't have family to visit in Poland, so I had a very romantic patriotism, in a very good way. I was really in love with Poland.
Yeah.
I had a big flag over my bed, and I had this very strong feeling as a child. And then everything that my parents would tell me would be through the optics of the war and loss.
Yep.
And I think certainly I feel very connected to the things that Mickiewicz talks about, and I find it very easy to slip from the romantic self to the romance of the nation, the love of the nation. So I'm very excited to hear it in English.
Yeah. I mean, I think it should also be pointed out that these particular poems of his are maybe not so much talking about the nation, and more about how rejected he was by one particular woman, and that inspired him to write a whole bunch of poetry in a way to express how he felt about this rejection, this famous Marilla, who Charles will talk about, I think, in his talk before we do our performance. And I think that's great as well, that he wrote, he can write Forefather's Eve, but he can also write a bunch of poems which are about kind of heartbreak, and you can interpret those how you like, but they are very human, which I find fantastic. And I think that's where it's interesting, not being a Pole approaching them, and that's what I meant about the baggage, I suppose.
Absolutely.
Is that it just casts a different eye on it, which I think is fantastic, because if it can't exist outside of those feelings of nationalism, and I suppose some kind of ownership and national identity, then that's a shame. But the fact is that it can exist outside of that, and that's what I think makes it great poetry. It's not only about Poland; it's about us, which is great.
Yes, and the great, any great artist who can tell us more about ourselves or allow us to express ourselves. It doesn't matter what country they've come from,
Yeah.
and it's wonderful to hear that. Now, you are co-director, co-artistic director of Theatre O. Just tell me about your work, what you do normally.
Well, there is no normal actually,
Oh, excellent.
which is great. And it's sort of terrifying, but also great. So Theatre O, it's an umbrella really for myself and Carolina Valdez, who's my co-artistic director. It's an umbrella under which we make work, and that's been plays, that's been pieces that we have created from scratch, that we've written and devised and created and toured all around the world. We've also done adaptations of novels. We've also done a whole ton of freelance work in the world of opera and film, and now we're starting in dance a little bit. It's more, Theatre O is more about a way of looking at the world, and I suppose taking the risk of presenting our interpretation of the world and how we see it, and whether that manifests itself in an opportunity like this, where there's this amazing book of poetry, do something with that, or whether it's, here's this ballet dancer, go and do something, around identity and dance and all those things. It could be that, or it could be going to make an opera. So Theatre O is an approach. It's a way of looking at the world, and the idea of collaboration is central to what we do. So it's always likely that somebody else's idea will be better than yours, and can improve the work that you make. And I think to surround yourself and to work with people who are brilliant people will only make you better, you, i.e. me or us, better as makers and as artists. So Theatre O is an amalgamation of many things. And we'll keep on evolving and becoming different things as we go through life.
Well, what an amazing opportunity we're going to have on Monday to really see how that all comes together. And sounds like we're in very exciting hands with theatre, with yourself and with Theatre O. Wow.
Well, it's a great example. It's taking Ilona Gumowska, taking Damsel Elysium, both who are brilliant at what they do.
Yeah.
And that's what, that's the magic. It's those people together. And that's what's exciting from my point of view. It's finding those combinations and going, what happens if we put these people together? And then, hopefully something really lovely happens.
Wow. And you're collaborating with a PCR, Polish Culture Institute, on this performance on Monday.
Yeah. So I've got I've had a bit of a sort of ongoing relationship with them, and in fact, it was them that introduced me to Mickiewicz in the first place, which was going to be this bigger piece that we started looking at last year. I met Marta de Zuniga on a plane to or from Bilbao. I think we share the fact that we both have Spanish partners, and we got chatting, and I told her about my adolescent years in Warsaw, and we met for coffee and we talked, and one thing led to another, and here we are, kind of getting ready to do our little piece at the Ognisko.
Wow.
But they've been doing the institute's really, I mean, it's all about partnerships, and I think that's what they've been really strong at these last years. So it's a real honor to be one of those partnerships.
Yeah, it's just an amazing organization, and also this remit to bring Polish culture to different countries around the world. But the London one is the UK based one is to bring that Polish culture to an English audience. it's just wonderful to have that, people doing really exciting stuff as well.
Yeah, no, it's really great to be a part of that. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. So tickets are available on the Ognisko Polskie website, and that's ogniskopolskie.org.uk for Monday night. So I can't think of anything more exciting on a Monday night than to see, well, than to be part of this event. And just to summarize what we're going to see. So there are a few poems, few ballads.
Yeah, so we're going to. So first of all, there's Charles will give a talk, and he's always amazing to listen to, and very engaging, very entertaining, and his depth of knowledge is incredible. So he will talk a little bit about the poems and the translation, and then we will perform for 35 minutes, 40 minutes. It's five of the ballads, and they, well, as I said, they all somehow deal with this relationship that he had with Marilla, although not all the ballads deal with it directly, but nevertheless the sentiments are there. The pieces that we're doing, the first one is To My Friends, which is followed by This I Like, which is followed by the Świtesianka, then Romanticism, which is the piece that's always cited as the great example of I suppose encompassing what Romanticism is, and then we finish with the very entertaining The Glove.
Wonderful. Yeah. And just to summarize, who will be there doing the performance? Will be yourself reading?
So there's me reading. Mm-hmm. I don't have to improvise. I just get to read the text. Ilona Gumowska, fantastic choreographer and dancer based in Warsaw. She's, I hope, flying over tonight. And Damsel Elysium, who is a very exciting sound artist who makes really incredible work.
Wow, what a fantastic evening. Well, thank you so much for being my guest on the show. Really looking forward, and I hope many people are going to join us. But remember, we're going to go for a salon atmosphere, so it's not a tickets will sell out if you don't buy them today or tomorrow or even Monday. So that's on Ognisko Polskie website, and Mickiewicz's Ballads and Romances, the battle cry of Polish Romanticism. And that's being brought to you by Joseph Alford and Theatre O and the Polish Cultural Institute. Let's not forget the people who really have actually sparked this off for all of us. So a huge thank you to the Polish Cultural Institute and to Ognisko Polskie as well. So thank you so much, Joseph.
Thank you.
Wonderful. So I'm going to play us out with some music, and I'll see you Monday. And here we go.